Good day, everyone. Hi, I'm Kirti Agu from Suriname. I work as a lead researcher and as a lecturer at the Antacom University for almost 15 years. I'm 40 years old, mother of two. And actually, yes, my motherhood is playing a dominant role in my professional career at this moment, but it's a joyous experience. And today I am presenting on the Indian diaspora in the Caribbean and the link with India after being invited by our beautiful and very intelligent colleague Pandita Indrani Rampersad. Thank you for this opportunity. Um, to tell you a little bit about my background, I did my dissertation on interreligious relations in Suriname and Guyana. I finished my PhD in 2017, and I'm really passionate about religious studies because they give you more insight in what motivates people, and what really inspires me is understanding how different religious groups try to find a way to live together peacefully, and if there are tensions, how they solve that. Because life is very precious, and there are so many different beliefs, sometimes positive ones, sometimes beliefs that may encourage different different stances, opposing beliefs on vital issues. Anyhow, but I enjoy it, and we try to delve deeper into religious behaviors. And today I'm going to shed some light on the religious institutionalization in Suriname, Guyana, Trinidad. Give me a second to share my screen, because this is a pre-recorded card. Most of the time we have I hope you can see my presentation right now. Let's go on full screen. Yeah. So most of the time when we have it is difficult to organize a live class for our colleagues in India. I've done some presentations in the past, and they were like very early in the morning. But thank you. All right. So what I'm going to talk today again is on the Indian diaspora and the Caribbean, and to some extent the link with India. You may have heard it already, but in the specific region of Caribbean, the Indian diaspora presence is influenced by indentured labor, which started with colonial projects in the past. Of course, indentured labor was not the only factor that has influenced our ethnic landscape in the Caribbean. Other forms of migration have also contributed to contemporary Indian diaspora. Here you see a short overview of the demographic background in Suriname, Guyana, and Trinidad. Hindustanis are among the largest ethnic groups, and we can say that actually they are contributing to also the largest religious groups in all three countries. I have done my master thesis on institutional development of Christianity, Hinduism, and Islam in Suriname and Trinidad. I've also done some studies after that on Suriname and Trinidad. I will give you some more background at the end of my presentation. But the reason for comparing these three countries, or for focusing on these three countries in today's presentation, has to do with their demographic component. In terms of historical background, Suriname, Guyana, and Trinidad, they have different time frames of indentured labor. It started first in Guyana, and then in Trinidad, and Suriname was the last country um, with with Hindustani indentured labor. It started in 1873 and finished in 1917. And as you can see, the largest group of Indians, Hindustani people, arrived in Guyana, followed by Trinidad and then Suriname. So The Indian people who came to these countries, they were predominantly Hindu, and a small percentage was Muslim. There were very few Christians. And how did they evolve? Well, they most of them they tried to maintain their religious groups, as I will show in a while. But what you can see here is that if you look at the percentages, Christianity, Hinduism, and Islam, they make up the largest share of the religious groups in all three countries. You can see here the percentage of the in the yeah, let's say the census data in the 21st, early 21st century. Suriname is now conducting its census after, yes, and it's a bit difficult. Anyhow, I'm trying to take it from here because these figures, they show how important the contribution was of the Hindustani people to the evolution of the religious background of the Caribbean countries of Suriname, Trinidad, and Guyana. I'm trying to jump to my next slide. And what was their exact contribution in terms of institutionalization of religions? As I said before, most of the indentured laborers were Hindu and Muslim. So my presentation will primarily deal with the institutionalization of Hinduism and Islam. And if you look at the situation of Trinidad, and we look at, I look at a few spheres. I look at the private religious sphere, like how they celebrate the religious festival, the space for that. And I look at the sphere of economy. I look at the sphere of law, the legal sphere, the public domain sphere, and of course the sphere of cultural organization. So there are a few spheres I took into account in comparing these countries. And what we found is that in in the 19th and 20th century, Suriname and Guyana, they had a more severe situation when it comes to the practice of Hinduism and Islam. Um, and one illustration was the case of Taja or Hosei, the Islamic festival, in Trinidad, as well as the fire pass ritual in Trinidad. I think it was Fair to Fact who wrote about it. But these two festivals, respectively Islam and Hindu, they were forbidden by the colonial government because they were seen as horrific and they were seen as troublesome for the colonial government. While they were part of the they were a core part of the religious identity of the Hindus and the Muslims at that time. Another thing is that Suriname and Guyana and Trinidad, they all had poor socioeconomic conditions for indentured laborers, and they all had problems with colonial policies of divide and conquer. But what was very striking is that in Suriname and Guyana, there were often strikes. There were more strikes than that in Trinidad and Guyana, there were more strikes of labor unions than in Suriname. And I think part of the explanation might be, the very severe colonial policy that had a very oppressive nature when it comes to space, social space, religious space. If you look at the turn of the 19th and 20th century, there were in all three countries immigrant organizations that altogether presented the Hindus and Muslims in the three countries. So in Suriname, you had an organization, Bharat. There was also an organization, it was called Surinamese Immigrant Association. Guyana had the British Guyana East Indian Association, and Trinidad had the Trinidad East Indian National Association. These were the pioneering organizations for political development, but also religious institutional development in all countries, in all three countries. I got this from an Indian Arrival Day magazine in Trinidad, where you see a picture, Hussein is still celebrated in Trinidad. Popular festival where there are large processions in the street and it attracts a large number of people. If you look at the first half of the 20th century, we see that in all three countries, Hindu and Muslim organizations became very prevalent. But at the same time, you get internal struggle. So you get organizations for the Arya Samajis and the Sanatanis. You get organizations that represented the Sunnis and what we call the Ahmadiyas in the Muslim society. And this internal struggle, which also had links with the theological beliefs, had consequences for the way religious organizations develop themselves. And we must take into account that these pioneering immigrant organizations and later the religious organizations created the basis for acquiring political power. So they were the vehicles for entering the political domain. In the second half of the 20th century, you get you get a different situation in all three countries. What I haven't really touched on is that until the first half of the 20th century, in all three countries, there were conversion programs, activities for Hindus and Muslims, but also other non-Christian religious groups, especially tribal communities. Um, and these conversion programs, they were especially meant to to make the people believe in a Christian superiority in the colonial society. And the Christian superiority, of course, was related to the colonial project, which was not just about taking wealth from the colonies, but also making the marginalized communities believe that the religion of the colonizer was better was better for human species. Anyhow, but that picture was was so dominant, and it led to converts among Hindus and Muslims in all three countries. However, the conversion strategies in Guyana and in Trinidad were more successful than in Suriname, and some of those things are very well documented. I also wrote about it in my in my dissertation, and which has become a book later. And part of the explanation is also published in some other articles I will talk about at the end. But the bottom line is that Guyana and Trinidad has experienced more intense Christianization conversion programs than Suriname, and that is part of the explanation why those two countries had more converts than Suriname. Um, in the second half of the 20th century, you get a gradual institutional power to push back the Christianization efforts, and it all started in the first half of the 20th century. The religious organizations of Hindus and Muslims, they try to ask for grants for building their own school, running their own schools. They appealed for their own marriage law, and so keep on. But in the second half of the 20th century, you see that these religious institutionalization efforts, they go together with political development. In all three countries, you see decolonization processes. You get the rise of political parties with Hindustani exponents, and they were all coming from the immigrant societies and religious organizations. what you get is that together with the influence of political ideologies and regimes, you get a situation that is favorable for more institutional, for better institutionalization of Hinduism and Islam. To put it into a perspective, you see that in Suriname you get grants for Hindu and Muslim organizations and children's homes. There were grants in 1953. There were subsidies for Hindu and Muslim schools. You get the cremation law. You get national holidays for Hindus and Muslims. And you know, these things happened after Hindustani also came into power. They became more prominent in the political domain. In Guyana, you get also the emergence of Hindustanis in political domain, and with that influence also a better impact on legislative in the legislative sphere. And what happened is that in Guyana they abolished the requirement of baptismal certificate for employment in the government. Remember, I said in the beginning that Christianization's efforts were more successful in Guyana and Trinidad than in Suriname. Part of the explanation is that to get a job in a government, you needed to prove a baptismal certificate. So only if you were Christian you could get a job. You know, and those jobs at that time they were better paid, they had a better status. So what happened is that in the 19, if I'm not correct, late 1960s, 1970s, they removed the baptismal certificate requirement for employment with the government. In Guyana, you also got Hindu and Muslim holidays, but the situation of Guyana differs a little bit from Suriname because in Guyana you had you get the regime of Burnham, who actually, and the regime of Burnham is not quite popular one because it was actually against a lot of religious organizations, including Christians. And during Burnham's regime, many religious schools were nationalized, including the Christian schools. And since Christian organizations had the most schools, they suffered the most from this policy. Um, it had influence because it led to less pressure on Hindus and Muslims for conversion. In Trinidad, you also get the situation of more visibility of Hindus and Muslims in public domain. To get the recognition of Hindu and Muslim holidays in the 1960s. And what in Trinidad was also observed, at least what I observed, is the role of Hindustani Christians in institutionalization. You get the Presbyterians who get very prominent political positions, and they try to influence the Hindustani culture in a positive way. I will not be able to talk in depth about each country because this is a very introductory presentation. But what I found is that after comparing all three countries, is that the institutionalization of Hinduism and Islam was a bit easier in Suriname than Guyana and Trinidad due to the role of the colonial policy, the relationships between the groups, and the political ideology and the regimes. I will I will briefly talk about the link with India. In all three countries, we have embassies of India, and what we have seen is that in all three countries, we have some infrastructural programs, you have cultural exchange programs, and you have scholarships. I have highlighted the role of scholarship and cultural exchange because these programs they enable the sustainability of our culture, which indentured laborers brought to the Caribbean and actually are shaping the diaspora from within, whether it is in terms of classical dance, Indian classical dance, in yoga, in language, Hindi, Sanskrit, or art, you know, or just No India program of the Ministry of External Affairs. These are programs which enable citizens of all three countries, especially of Indian descent, to get in touch with all three with our cultural heritage. These three countries also contribute to the diaspora policy of India. And I talked about this with the former ambassador of Suriname and Guyana, that was Miss Ashna Kanhai. And he said that during her term as ambassador, the embassy of Suriname participated in stakeholders meetings where especially the influential NGOs, where they talked about the formulation of Indian diaspora policy. And she said, she highlighted that point. She said the impact of the Indian diaspora in Suriname on India is is primarily based on the presence of the Indian people in Suriname. And she said, she really stressed it. She said, shortly after the independence of Suriname, the Indian Cultural Center was installed here in the country, and it was first as an annex of the IC.
Namaste. Apologies for having to stop the video at that point because of time constraints. I will be sharing the link so you will see the whole video. I'll invite now Professor Neeraj Khanna for the Mangalacharan. Professor, please join from where you are.
So, namaste and Ram Ram to everybody. I'm Professor Neeraj Khanna, one of the attendee of the course, and presently I am in Adhyayan at Ramjan Bhumi. So, it is my great fortune to pray Mangalacharan of the today's class from the Ramjan Bhumi itself. So, जय पर कृपा करहूँ जन जानी कभी और अजीर न चावही बानी मोर सुधारही सो सब भांति जासु कृपा नहीं कृपा घाती मंगल भवन अमंगल हारी द्रवं सुदशरथ अजिर बिहारी. Thank you and Ram Ram.
Ram, Professor, while I have you there, please read the Neeraj Nayan that you had composed for us.
Yeah.
This was his response to the course. We had invited everybody to send a little piece. So he has given us a little piece of poetry. So you please read it, Professor.
Oh, okay. I have sent it to you, I think.
Okay, I'll read it from here. Listen. Everybody was asked to send a little comment very quickly. महामन की पवित्र बगिया में सदाशिव जी की कृपा से इंद्रानी जी ने जो पाप रचा है, उन्नत ज्ञान संपदा के धनी को ने हमको ये सिखाया है. परदेशी भारतवंशी सदा सनातनी कला संस्कृति सभ्यता ज्ञान तकनीकी की उन्नत संगम संग समुद्र पार भी अनेक भारत बसा है. In English, for those of us who don't know Hindi, in the sacred garden of Mahamana, that's the founder of Banaras Hindu University, under the blessing of Sadashiv Ji, he's the coordinator of the Bharat Adhyayan Kendra, and Indrani Ji, that's me, as we have composed the divine verse. The wise and knowledgeable ones have taught us this. Foreign-born Indians, with their eternal art, culture, civilization, knowledge, and technology, have created a profound confluence, and many Indias exist even across the ocean. Thank you very much, Professor, for your very deep ruminations in poetic form. And I'll just read little pieces from others who have sent in. These will compose, of course, and share with everybody. And in our final reports, I'll read one or two lines from everybody. Comments from Jayashree. She's way out in the USA, early morning now. We really appreciate your time and effort for India's diaspora movement. You provided us with wonderful lectures for this short period of time. Thank you. From Marcelo of Brazil. As a student of Hindu studies and a Hindu from Brazil, knowing about an interesting subject as diaspora that has to do with Hindu Dharma and Indian culture abroad of India, it is always interesting for me. I feel very grateful for the opportunity to attend the course. And then I have from Nazio Banu Sheikh from Mumbai University. This course has been an exceptionally enlightening experience, providing deep insights into the cultural practices, resilience, and significant contributions of Indians across the globe. Before attending the course, my knowledge about the Indian diaspora was limited to surface level understanding, particularly about indentured laborers. However, through this course, I gained a much deeper perspective on their struggles, acceptance capacities, and remarkable achievements. Learning about the Girmitias, indentured laborers forcibly taken to distant lands such as Mauritius, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Suriname, Fiji, and other parts of the world was both eye-opening and thought-provoking. Their ability to overcome immense challenges and establish thriving communities is nothing short of inspiring. She's written much more lovely pieces that we'll share with all. Comments from Alagarasa Vijay Kumar. My apologies if I mispronounce names. I am from Sri Lanka and currently a student of BHU History of Art, Master of Tourism and Travel Management. In that sense, to know the culture of the people who have gone from India and how they influence tourism. The lectures are really good and the guidance of the lecturers is also good. You have managed this course very well and I thank you for that. It was really a lesson for my tourism education and I was eager to learn new things. Thanks again. You should continue to provide such courses and I am interested in reading it too. Comments from Asmita Sarkar. As a UG student majoring in history, the topic has been very close to my subject of interest. The terminologies have been new to me and the abundance of information has really contributed to my understanding of this subject. After attending these lectures, I've come to understand that the Indian diaspora dispersed across the globe continues to add on glory to our nation and are anchored to their homeland in some way or the other. Asmita Sarkar. And I continue. Devendra Prasad, he's an assistant English professor, Gorakhpur University. Actually, my research work is related to the topic diaspora. That is why I decided to join this course. It has been very interesting and enlightening after taking each and every class of this course about how the migrated people survived in the foreign land in different cultures. We learned about them and knew how they became socially and politically very powerful in many countries. And comments from Kanhu Charan Barada. Barada? Apologies. Research scholar from the tribal district of Korapur, Odisha. All the lectures are so informative and insightful. This course was well structured and delivered a comprehensive understanding of global India's diaspora and geopolitical relationship between India and the world. The Indian diaspora has an important role to play in Southeast Asian countries, economy and society. Archana Pandey, a postdoctoral fellow, History Department from our own BHU. All lecturers and speakers, academicians, vice chancellors, ambassadors were amazing, presentable, enlightening, and splendid. And I learned many things about diaspora studies. Further, I want to do work on the position of Indian women in diaspora. So it is my keen request to Bharat, Adhyayan, Kendra for organizing a special lecture series on Indian women in diaspora studies. Thank you, Archana Pandeyji. Dhruv Mehta, student of our own BHU. As someone with a keen interest in migration studies, I was eager to explore the historical and contemporary narratives that shape the experiences of Indians abroad. The blend of theoretical frameworks and real world examples made the content accessible and thought provoking. And Sunita Pahuja, a former second secretary in Hindi and culture with the government of India embassies in Trinidad and Tobago, and also she was in Mauritius. She had a very long and very thought-provoking response, but I just read very shortly. She said it was an incredibly informative and engaging experience that has deepened my understanding of the complex and dynamic nature of India's diaspora. I now have a deeper understanding of how India's diaspora has played a pivotal role in shaping India's international influence. From economic contributions to cultural diplomacy, it is clear that the diaspora is not just a reflection of India abroad, but an active force in promoting its global presence. One of the most valuable insights I gained was the idea of the diaspora's diverse yet unified experiences. And on behalf of delegates from Suriname, Pandit Nitin Jagbandan, he also wrote a very lovely piece, long, but I've had to shorten them. He says, and he's talking about Suriname, South America. We feel honored to be part of this first group of students of this course, which was also initiated for the first time at BHU. This course has served as a basis to further motivate us to gain more depth in the Indian diaspora. And he was especially motivated because he traveled widely in the Indian diaspora as a practicing pundit. He practices for over, I think, 25 years. The management of the course was excellent. We always started on time. We stopped late a few times, and I didn't mind. Great accessibility of participants because the course was hybrid. Sound, lighting, interface, PPTs, and all other ICT matters were correct. There was always a catchy introduction by your person. The fee for the course was not expensive at all. I'll say that again. The fee for the course was not expensive at all. So we have to encourage more people next time to join. Feedback in the form of the quiz has been very inspiring to continue listening carefully to the lectures. The lectures were not long, so pedagogically perfect. And then Kushank Prasad Das, an MA Political Science student from our own Faculty of Social Science, BHU, he says, the quality of lectures and lecturers were fantastic. The management did great, and the relevance of the course for me as a student of political science will remain forever. As I look to find a topic for my PhD, this course has certainly given me another option or choice to ponder upon, which I will seriously consider. Well, thank you very much, Kushank Prasad Das. We hope you do a PhD in diaspora studies, some part of the world. Rajesh, I want to explore my knowledge about Indian migrants, so I pursued this course. Course structure prepared in systematic way with good content, which is very beneficial for knowledge about Indian migrants. Okay, I'll go to Kalpo Arati from Suriname. And she says, I myself am fourth generation born of Indian labor migrants in Suriname. And I'm very proud that I was allowed to participate in these lectures. We also have many cultural elements that are exactly as authentic as how our ancestors brought them from India. And she mentions Matkurwa, Londa Kinach, and Baitagana as things that we share around the diaspora in India. I'm also proud to say that we Surinamese are the only country in the Western Hemisphere that has retained the Hindi language. Our own Sarnami Hindi is spoken fluently, but Hindi does not lag behind. So their Hindi is a mix. They call it Suriname Hindi, Suriname language, Dutch and Hindi. Kavita Krishna, Migama, Director, University Relations, IKS, Brihat Culture Creatives, Brihat. And she's a student at Arsha Vidya Gurukulam. She says, let me start congratulating you for a beautifully curated and executed course. And she says, it's the need of the hour. As we in India are ignorant and do not know much about our diaspora, except the recent wave of migrants to US, UK, and Australia. And of course, V.S. Naipaul. We all know V.S. Naipaul comes from my country. To learn of how Indians, majority Hindus, were taken to these far-flung countries. And she says to think of the hapless people in the 19th century who were taken to Trinidad, Guyana, Suriname, Mauritius, or Fiji, and their sense of loss. Remember, we talked a lot about loss, alienation, the insurmountable distance from their homeland. And she says that ruthlessness must have been very painful. And she says we should work for a distinct identity as identified by Dr. Ganesh Chand, who had spoken about us coming together as a Girmitya identity, that we can have something of our own identity. Added to this, there is no validation or recognition from India, which is the spiritual center of the Girmityas. Then the pain is much deeper. Thanks to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's official visits to some of the Girmitya countries, that wound has somewhat been healed in 2024. Okay, so this brings me to the end of the few that I was able to pick up. My apologies if I missed any of you, but we will share them all in the group and share them all in the final report. So your whole comments will be there. We value everybody. And it's time for me now to introduce our guest speaker for today. Our speaker for the final lecture is a highly accomplished scholar and politician, a freedom fighter in South Africa's struggle for freedom, and a person most grounded in his Indian identity. He is currently the High Commissioner of South Africa to India. He has an illustrious academic and political career. Now, please don't forgive me if I'm lengthy in the introduction. Don't forgive me. We need to celebrate our diaspora Indians abroad and their achievements and what they are doing still to keep us all together and make us proud. This is one, all of our speakers, we are very proud of you. And our speaker is an illustrious academic. And as I said, he has a good, strong political career. He was educated in Oriental history and religions, from the undergraduate to the DPhil, or what we call PhD level, at the University of Durban, Westville, now called University of KwaZulu-Natal. He holds a diploma in fine arts, a certificate in human rights from the United Nations Center for Human Rights in Geneva, and a certificate in international trade and investment promotion from the International Trade Institute of Singapore under the Singapore Cooperation Program. He has held senior positions in various spheres of the United Nations, like Chief Director for North Africa, Director for the UN Political and Global Security Affairs, and Head of the Department's Parliamentary Office in Cape Town. And he was coordinator of the substance team of the UN World Conference Against Racism, 2001. He was ambassador to the European Union, Belgium, and Luxembourg, a political counselor at the South African Permanent Mission to the UN in Geneva and the South African High Commission in New Delhi, respectively. As ambassador in Brussels, he chaired several high-level committees. He was the Deputy Director General for Asia and Middle East, Department of International Relations and Cooperation. He has served as Ambassador at Large, Asia and BRICS, BRICS, and was the coordinator for Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. Before joining the government in 1995, our speaker followed an academic career lecturing at the University of KwaZulu-Natal and the University of South Africa. He participated in over 30 international academic conferences and 40 national academic conferences. He has published more than 30 articles in both local and international journals and served on editorial boards of journals. He has received several grants for postgraduate research and postdoctoral research and published monographs as well. He's received numerous awards. I really want to read this as an inspiration to us in the diaspora of how much we can achieve. Here is a good role model. He has received numerous awards, a fellowship in human rights from the United Nations Center for Human Rights, internship in human rights at the UN for Human Rights again, an adjunct professor at Fujian Agriculture and Forestry University in China, honorary professor at the Gumilyov Eurasian National University, Astana, a senior adjunct fellow, research and information system for developing countries, because his speech is going to be focused. We see the expertise coming out here. He was conferred the Pravasi Bharatiya Saman Award. That's the day that for the diaspora is recognized in India. So he was given that award in January 2019 for promoting South Africa-India diplomatic relations. He has a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Indian Association of South Africa, an honorary doctorate from the University of International Business and Economics in Beijing, Order of Friendship, Russian Federation, extraordinary professor, Northwest University, member of the editorial board of the Journal of Indian Ocean Rim Studies, a member of the International Advisory Board of South African Institute of International Affairs. In terms of politics, he's a member of the African National Congress, and he was involved in South Africa's liberation struggle. One speaker had spoken. We think that Indians abroad didn't do much in freedom of both India and also the struggles in their own country. And here's a brilliant example of our next speaker being part of that liberation struggle from apartheid. You all know apartheid, the blacks and the whites and Indians separate. So our speaker, it is my distinct honor to invite His Excellency, Professor Anil Sooklal, to deliver his lecture on the role of the Indian diaspora of the global South in shaping the new world order. Over to you, Professor Sooklal.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Rampersad. Rani, as I know you from way back when I first visited Trinidad and Tobago in 1992. And that was a visit I undertook as part of our studies on the Indian diaspora, comparing Hindu religious practices in South Africa, Mauritius, and Trinidad and Tobago. And that took me to Trinidad, where I befriended Rani. Thank you very much for inviting me on this program. I've been listening to some of the inputs over the past half an hour, and it's been really inspirational, what you are covering in this program. And I'm sure you have covered much ground over the past weeks that you have been attending this program. Now, I deliberately chose a kind of a provocative topic, speaking of the Indian diaspora of the global South, and I will unpack what I mean by this. I'm sure you have covered during the course of your program and unpacking what Indian diaspora is. We use this term very, very loosely today. It's become a very popular term because of the rise of the Indian diaspora, which is related to the rise of India in recent times. And I think they are both interrelated and interconnected, and I will explain as we go along. The Indian diaspora is one of the largest diasporas today, as you rightly know. According to the Ministry of External Affairs of the Indian government, on the website of as recently as March this year, the number is around 35 million. And that 35 million is broken down roughly into 20 million made up of people of Indian origin and 15 million made up of non-resident Indians. That's a substantial number spread out almost in every part of the world. Now, I want to distinguish between the two streams of the diaspora, and within this two streams, you have further subsections of the diaspora. And I think it's important that we don't use this term as a homogeneous term, because the diaspora is not homogeneous. It's highly heterogeneous in many, many ways. When you speak of the Indian diaspora of the global south, I'm specifically referring to those countries where you had movement of Indian nationals during the colonial period under British rule to mainly countries where Indians were taken as laborers, starting from about 1835 onwards, when they first went to the Caribbean islands, Mauritius, and then to various other countries around the world, South Africa, Fiji included, apart from the Caribbean countries. And I think it's important to distinguish this, because this was the first mass movement of Indians from India in the modern period, if one can refer to it as such. And the reasons, as we well know, was largely economic. Now, looking at the South African example specifically, even within this stream of the Girmitias or Jahajis, as we often refer to ourselves, it was not a homogeneous stream. The majority of Indians that came to South Africa, and I believe this would be the same, of the Girmitia communities in places like Mauritius, Fiji, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Suriname, and so forth, were largely indentured Indians that went there to work either in the sugar plantations or, in the case of Malaysia, also in the rail industry, were mainly drawn from parts of India where they were taken as laborers. As you know, slavery was abolished in 1834. And as a result of immense global pressure on the plight of those that were taken from Africa as slaves and the abuse that they suffered at the hands of the colonial masters. As a result of the abolishment of slavery, you had a new stream of labor, what they referred to as indentured Indians, starting as early as 1835. Soon after you abolished slavery, you started another form of slavery, and you gave it a new term, referring to it as indentured labor. Now, the conditions of these Indians that went to these sugar plantations around the world was nothing less than that of slavery. They were treated in an inhumane manner. The agreement, that's why the term Girmitias, was an agreement that favored the colonial master and the owners of these plantations, and the rewards were pittance in terms of monetary reward and other rations that they received. So you had this first stream of mass movement of Indians from India. And of course, India of this period was a decimated India. As you know, for the major part of the first two millennia, up to the Industrial Revolution starting around 1810, the two largest economies in the world, which accounted for close to 60% of global GDP, was India and China. And with the coming of the British, India was reduced to serfdom and exploited both for its natural resources as well as its human resources. So if you look at the exporting of labor from India to all of these countries where the Girmitia community was sent to, they helped build these countries and played an important role economically, not only in providing labor, many of them post the period of indenture had expired, decided to stay in these countries, and became citizens of these countries and played an important role in all spheres of life. But in all of the colonies that they went to, immediately you saw the economic benefits of Indian labor. All of these economies immediately lifted, and the sugar industries in all of these countries became buoyant and an important part of the respective countries' economic activities. Now, much later, of course, you had the movement of Indians in the more recent times, starting from the late 60s into the 70s and 80s, when you had non-resident Indians going mainly to the West, to the USA and Canada, and to several European countries. Now, I think it's important we distinguish between these two streams of the diaspora. You have the people of Indian origin, whom I've been referring to, and the non-resident Indians who are still recognized as citizens of India, and most of them retain their Indian citizenship, even though they're resident in the West. Now, the collective worth of the Indian diaspora, there's various estimates. It's ranged from 1.5 trillion to 3 trillion today. So it's a very powerful economic entity globally today. And of course, the non-resident Indians in the main, especially from the Middle East, an important element in terms of remittance to India. They contribute a significant amount to the Indian GDP. The largest global remittance come from the Indian diaspora. And last year, the Indians remitted close to over $120 billion to back home to India. Now you can see also what a powerful economic tool the diaspora is. Now, why has the diaspora become so visible and so relevant today? Why was it not the case 20 or 30 years ago? Who gave attention to the global Indian diaspora? Those of us that came from a Girmitia background, whether you were living in Trinidad and Tobago, whether you were in Suriname or Guyana or Fiji, who really gave attention to us globally? Not much attention. But there are two factors here. Firstly, the internal factor in terms of the role that these communities have played. They have become naturalized citizens in the various countries that they call home today. And they've played a significant role in all spheres of life in these countries. Secondly, the rise of India, especially over the past decade and a half. Over the past decade alone, India has moved from the 10th largest global economy to become the 5th largest global economy. And according to recent IMF prediction, India will next year overtake Japan to become the 4th largest global economy, and by 2027 overtake Germany to become the 3rd largest global economy. Now, all of these are interrelated to what's happening within the Indian diaspora community, both the PIOs and the NRI communities. We have seen this in terms of the political prominence of Indians in the diaspora, both in the West, within the NRI community. You had Rishi Sunak recently as Prime Minister of the UK. Who would have thought one day that the colonial power that colonized India would have an Indian presiding as head of state of that country? This was unthinkable just as recent as 20 or 30 years ago. And the role that the Indian community is playing, not only in the economies, in the political sphere, in the cultural and social spheres of these countries, is extremely visible today. The recent visit of Prime Minister Modi to Guyana received prominent attention throughout the world. And I think Guyana is a good example of the role that the Indian diaspora from the global south is playing in terms of shaping what is happening within the emerging global architecture. The majority of the people in countries like Guyana, Mauritius is another typical example, where the majority of the communities, about 70%, are from Girmitya background. And the Prime Minister is of Girmitya background. And these are important countries today in the global south. Gone are the days when small countries are insignificant. They may be small, but they are no longer powerless. They are also powerful countries in various ways today. The fact that Prime Minister Modi went to Guyana and you signed a large number of agreements, and that a large country and an important global country like India saw fit to go and forge and strengthen ties with Guyana, I think that's significant. Significant that Guyana may be a small country, but it's an influential country in its region. Likewise, Mauritius. I think Mauritius is a good example of a global south country that has stood up to a major global north country in terms of a territorial dispute. As you know, Mauritius attained independence in 1965 from British rule. But in that process, the British retained control over what is called a string of islands, the Chagos Islands. Now, these rightfully belong to Mauritius, but the British did not relinquish control over this. These are strategically important islands in terms of global security. In one of these islands, Diego Garcia, the USA has a military base. As you know, the Indian Ocean is extremely strategic in terms of global geopolitics and geoeconomics. So Mauritius has been agitating for the return of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius as their rightful territory since 1965. But it's only in recent times that Mauritius decided to take this matter to the International Court of Justice. And in 2019, the International Court of Justice ruled that the British occupation of the Chagos Islands is illegal and unlawful, and that the territory must be returned to Mauritius. This was in 2019. But the British did not heed the ruling of the ICJ. The ICJ ruling is not legally binding, but it is an advisory that one cannot ignore in terms of the global multilateral order today. So Mauritius I think someone's not mute.
प्रज्ञा तंबर जी अपना म्यूट
Mark Taylor. Thank you. So I think, so what Mauritius did, Mauritius decided to lobby globally. Because what you had here is a violation of international law by the British government in ignoring the ruling of the ICJ. So Mauritius lobbied within the global multilateral system, took this to the United Nations and spoke to their partners globally, both the global north and south. Now, interestingly, when the Russia-Ukraine war broke out, one of the loudest voices against Russia's attack on Ukraine was the United Kingdom. And they accused Russia of violating international law. Now, there's the hypocrisy that in 2022, when you had the Russia-Ukraine conflict breakout, the UK was speaking of Russia violating international law. And here you have the UK violating international law, ignoring a ruling of the ICJ dating to 2019, and yet speak of upholding international law. And that's the hypocrisy that we see in the world today, that those that are in positions of power are free to violate the international global security and legal architecture as they wish. And if smaller countries do that, they will then try to penalize them. Now, Mauritius, I believe, was very smart in taking it to the global stage. And I think it exposed the UK of its double standards. And it was only this year in October that the UK finally decided to abide by the ruling of the ICJ and agreed to return Chagos Islands to Mauritius as their rightful sovereign territory. Now, I'm using this as an example of a small country that may be small in size, may be small in terms of its population, in terms of landmass, in terms of its GDP compared globally. But here you have a country of Girmitia origin challenging one of the most powerful countries in the world today in terms of rightfully getting back what it belongs to Mauritius. So this is where you see the role of the Girmitia community in the global south. I'm using Mauritius as an example, but I believe we saw this in South Africa itself. The Indian community is a very small community, making up about 2.5% of the South African population. But they played an important role in championing South Africa's liberation struggle. The number of Indians that were incarcerated, that lost their lives, that were served with banning orders, and played a leading role in South Africa's freedom struggle, that's undisputed. Many of them were imprisoned in Robben Island, where President Mandela was imprisoned for the major part of his 27 years imprisonment by the apartheid regime. Many of them were of Indian origin, and they were at the forefront of the struggle. And these again demonstrate the power and role and how the Indian communities immersed themselves into their respective countries that became their adopted home and their natural homes. And increasingly you are seeing this in countries of the global south. Trinidad and Tobago is a typical example. The Indian community there, the role they play in shaping all dimensions of life of Trinidadian society, from political to the private sector to cultural, social. It's fully immersed in every dimension of life. And I think that's the same for every other Girmitia community of the global south. And they are playing a leading role in raising the profile of the global south. Now, during India's chairship of the G20 last year, Prime Minister Modi launched a novel insertion into the G20 agenda. He brought the global south to the forefront by convening what was called the Voice of the Global South. Now, within the G20, this has never happened, where you had a formal meeting of the global south countries to discuss their issues and their concerns and address that within the G20 agenda. And Prime Minister Modi chaired 2 sessions of the Voice of the Global South in January last year, and just prior to them giving up the presidency of the G20 in November last year. Now, I think this is significant that India identifies with the global south because such a large percentage of the Indian diaspora, the major part of that 35 million, is resident in the global south. So I think that is significant that you had this high profile meeting focusing on the global south and mainstreaming the concerns and interests of the global south into the G20 agenda. And I think this is again another example of how the rise of India is also focused on the rise of the global south and working with countries of the global south. Now, in recent times, of course, Prime Minister Modi has visited a large number of countries where you have significant Girmitia communities, South Africa included. And I think this is where, and in each of these visits, he has engaged with the local Indian community. And I think this is an important engagement that is taking place at the present time. Because, as Sri Aurobindo rightfully stated, the rise of India is also the rise of Sanatana Dharma. And you have seen this. You have seen this throughout the world. The respect that the Hindu Dharma gets today in international capitals was not there 2 decades ago. The White House today will have a formal lighting of Diya and celebrate Diwali. So will number 10 Downing Street. So will you would see the same in countries like Canada and many other European capitals, where previously they didn't even know that Diwali existed. Today, when it's Diwali, you will see heads of state from around the world sending Prime Minister Modi greetings for Diwali. And that's because of the rise of India, that you see that Indian culture, Indian traditions, Indian festivals, Indian places of worship are coming to the fore. And the global community know about this because of the visibility that is brought to the global presence of Indians around the world through this rise of India. So I think it's interrelated, because what that also does, it brings renewed respect. I'm sure when Prime Minister Modi went to Guyana, the Indian community there had a high level of pride that you had the Indian Prime Minister in their midst. And it, I'm sure, gave them a lot of joy, but also elevated their status in their society. And I think this is what is happening when you look at the global Indian diaspora, especially the global South. Because the global South, if I could use the term, are the poorer in terms they don't have the same economic might, the same financial might as the diaspora from the NRI band that I referred to. And I think this is important to understand, that we may have come from backgrounds that were financially poor, that our foreparents went to various parts of the world as laborers. But today, the majority are no longer just laborers. They are holding important positions in each and every one of these countries. They are holding very influential offices, from being heads of state, cabinet ministers, very senior officials in the various governments. Within the business space, they are occupying extremely important positions, being executives, CEOs of major multinationals, major companies domestically in the respective countries. Within the cultural field, they are leading lights in terms of upholding the torch of Indian culture in all of these communities. What we have seen also, which I think was a brilliant innovation of India, and again, it was Prime Minister Modi who decided that the UN must declare an International Yoga Day. Now, this International Yoga Day is nothing but bringing attention to Indian culture, Indian traditions, and Indian spirituality. This has been adopted throughout the world. When you look at International Yoga Day today, it's celebrated across the world. And every year it's celebrated, it's becoming stronger and stronger and more popular. Now, the Festival of Colors, as it's called in the West, Holi, throughout the world now you find celebration of Festival of Colors. Now, this is what you call the soft power of Indian culture and diplomacy, where without forcefully trying to bring people to your folds by conversion or other means, you use what we refer to in diplomacy as soft power, because yoga is good for the human society as a whole. Even though its roots are in Hindu culture and tradition and in India, the whole world adopts it and see the benefits of it. Likewise, you have seen the power of cricket, especially in the Caribbean, in places like South Africa. And again, that's the IPL today has become a bigger brand than even Bollywood. It generates more revenue than Bollywood today, but it's become such a powerful force. So much so that I saw even in Guyana, Prime Minister Modi had a special meeting with the cricket players of the past and the present. That shows you again how sport as well becomes such an important tool in welding the diaspora together and becoming an important tool in demonstrating the power of the diaspora through sport. So it's through sport, through culture, be it through yoga, be it through holy, whatever ways, names it's called in different parts of the world, and be it through various forms of dance and music that today is embraced by the whole world. And of course, Indian movies is still an important dimension of Indian culture that's embraced today. So recently you see Indian movies translated into Mandarin, and some of them are so popular. I recall at one of the BRICS summit, President Xi saying to Prime Minister Modi that I can't recall the exact name of the movie, that's become a blockbuster in China, that everyone is flocking to the cinemas to see it, and he himself saw the movie. Likewise, in countries like Russia and other parts of the world, this is the power of the diaspora today, and the power that is being infused as a result of the percolation of all dimensions of Indian culture, civilization throughout the world. And in all of these, we are seeing the rise of the diaspora from the global south. And for me, that is the biggest gain, because the diaspora of the global north do not fully understand the challenges that we face in the global south. A person living in Berlin of Indian origin, or a person living in London of Indian origin, doesn't have the same developmental challenges that you and I, coming from the global south countries where the diaspora communities are housed, they don't have these challenges of poverty and underdevelopment and of inequality. They don't have that, nor do they understand it. But we live it and experience it. And therefore, I make this distinction of issues pertaining to the global south and how it impacts on us. The original Indian diaspora, if I could call it that went out as laborers, but today have become leaders in their respective countries and shaping the politics, the economics, and other dimensions of life of the diaspora community globally. And I think this is such a positive development. This social platform is an important platform. New technologies have enabled us to speak to each other. The first time I had contact with the Indian diaspora was in 1989. That's where I met colleagues from Trinidad, Sri Raviji and others from Guyana, when we attended the first GOPIO, the Global Organization of People of Indian Origin, that was held in New York. And for me, coming from South Africa, where we faced isolation, because as you know, the Indian government was the first government to impose comprehensive sanctions against the Indian community. So we were isolated from India because we could have no interaction with India, nor could India and the Indian government and its people have any interaction with South Africa as part of the punitive action by the Indian government, and the rest of the world in the main followed, applying sanctions to South Africa. South Africa was suspended from the United Nations. We were isolated economically, politically, isolated in terms of sporting, cultural, and social contact. And for me, it was interesting as my first exposure to the Indian diaspora, having come from this isolated situation that we experienced as South Africa. When I came to this first GOPIO, I met for the first time Indians from all around the world. And there was such a great appetite amongst all of us to connect, because there was such a commonality in terms of our own histories, in terms of our own stories, in terms of our own challenges going forward. And that is how I got interested in doing a comparative study of the Hindu community of Trinidad and Tobago, South Africa, and Mauritius, because I saw so many similarities between ourselves. We all came from some of us from the same villages, from the same provinces, from the same cities. Our foreparents just took different ships because they were all shipped out as laborers to different parts of the world, and they had no choice on which ship they could jump onto. So this was a revelation for me. But now that we have the social media, and especially during COVID, we started using the social platforms more effectively as means of communication. So we have been in touch with the diaspora. Those of us in South Africa that have been in contact with the diaspora in other forms, now we have the social platform where we can interact with each other, be it from colleagues from Trinidad, from Guyana, Suriname, Mauritius, Fiji, South Africa, wherever. And I think we need to make more use of these platforms to discuss our common aspirations, our common challenges, and share experience where we can benefit from each other. Because this diaspora community is a powerful, powerful community today. Let us not underestimate our own importance. And let us not just take our importance from India and the rise of India. In our own right, we have grown and become important entities in our respective countries. And I think it's important for us in the global South countries, as the Indian diaspora, to connect with each other because we have different challenges and different aspirations, as I've said, from the NRI community. And it is important that we work together and interact with each other and connect more frequently between ourselves to see how we can strengthen the global South Indian diaspora and also benefit from each other. Of course, the contact with India is important, but it shouldn't be the sole criteria. It should be also sharing experiences of how we have, since the start of the Girmatiya movement as early as 1935 to the present day, the journey we have traveled. I think this is a good story to tell, to compare notes, and to ensure that this story is told so that the newer generations, especially the younger colleagues on this platform, and I'm sure so pleased to see so many of you as young students showing interest in this part of our history. You are going to be the storytellers and writers of this history and take this history into the future because history is what shapes our future. And this is a good history to speak about. It was a history forged in struggle, a history forged under very trying and difficult circumstances. But out of these positions of adversity, we have triumphed and we are an important entity in our respective countries. And globally, we need to connect with each other and solidify this relationship between ourselves in terms of addressing the global challenges we have today and ensuring that we assist each other based on our own experiences. Let me leave it here, Rani, for now, because I know there's limited time. But I thought I would share some of these views with you in terms of this very exciting cause that you have on the Indian diaspora. And I believe that uh, we need to have more of these causes in other parts of the world, in our respective countries, and at more Indian universities as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Your Excellency, thank you for that brilliant delivery. And you take me back to 1989 in New York City when we all met, Raviji, myself, you, Radhika, and we had a wonderful time. That's the first Gopio, the first Gopio. And I want you to know that Gopio members are also participating here. And our first lecture was delivered by Professor Nirja Gupta, who is from Gopia, and she's the Vice Chancellor of Mumbai University right now. So that now you are here in India, we hope that we can strengthen this diaspora, especially the South, a whole lot more. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And I'll open it up to a few questions because we have up to 5:30. I had extended the time, so we are comfortable right now. Any questions? I hope we do have. You know what Global South is, everybody? Professor, would you tell them what Global South is?
Sure, sure. I took it for granted. You see, when you deal with the international relations, you take it for granted. Everyone knows this term. But very often I'm asked this question, even from diplomats, especially from countries. The world today, in the past, they had this term first world and third world. The first world were the advanced countries of the world, the most powerful economies. Third world were the poorer countries of the world, like those of us in Africa, in the Caribbean, in Latin America, and of course Asia, the major part of Asia, including India, was referred to as third world countries. But as the countries from the developing world, because that is what the global south is, countries that belong to the developing world, broadly divided into north and south. The north being the most advanced economies in the world, because they are by and large geographically located in the north. Your European countries, your North American countries, in Asia, Japan was amongst those, being an advanced economy, and for a long time, until China overtook it, the second largest global economy until 2009. So that is broadly referred to as the global north, the advanced economies. The global south are by and large countries that are developing countries or emerging market economy countries, as it's referred to. So we refer to ourselves broadly within the sphere of diplomacy as the global south. So it would include the whole of Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, the major part of Asia. China and India are still regarded as global south countries, and the rest of the world's so-called advanced economies or major economies are the global north. But I must put a rider here. What was major economies are no longer your dominant economies, because as recently as 1975, when the group of 7 countries were formed, China was not in that group because China was still a poor country. And today, China is the second largest global economy. India is the 5th largest global economy. Brazil, which is part of the global south, is the 8th largest global economy. They are bigger than many of the so-called global north countries. So the world is in flux, it's changing. And very loosely, we use these terms global north and south to refer to the developed world and developing world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Any questions online? If not, I'll move quickly to just small snippets. I have asked some unique persons to speak for 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. They demonstrate a diaspora person that is unique. So Raj, please tell us about yourself. I think, Excellency, you're going to like this profile. Raj? And Raj will show the experience of being born in the Caribbean, living in the US, returned to Andhra Pradesh in India. And it's such a story of return, but not return. Where's my friend Raj? Shashi, are you on? Or Shrikant? Is Shrikant on? Raj? So we'll ask Professor Gansham to give a few words. As one of the speakers that you were there said, yeah, we have read all of those. Yeah, anybody here would like to speak? Or let Professor speak first and prepare yours. After that, you say something. Professor, give us a quick little. Those of you there.
Namaste and good afternoon. His Excellency Professor Anil Sooklal, if you recollect your last visit to Banaras Hindu University, I had privilege of hosting you in the Department of History. Had a long conversation including your ancestral home, very close to Banaras, Gazipur. So sir, once again, you are welcome. I was busy in my office work, being head of the department. There are a lot of other formalities also. I missed your lecture, but desperately I wanted to see you online and extend our warm welcome and renewed invitation also, since you are ambassador here in New Delhi. We are eagerly waiting for your presence here in Banaras University. For a long time, we have been thinking that how to connect our brethren whose ancestors left this part of the country more than a century earlier. There is an attempt to create a small facility here in Banaras Hindu University, and I think your presence in Delhi and uh, other ambassadors from the Caribbean countries also who are frequently visiting Banaras Hindu University. Sir, we look forward your cooperation in this regard, and would like to know from you also that I think this is your first tenure here in India. What are your visions bringing, diaspora, especially the old diaspora? I had a opportunity and privilege of visiting Durban last year, and I felt at home. And what I say, coming from this part of India, I always feel it's a kind of pilgrimage for me whenever I visited Durban or for that matter Trinidad. Yeah, I don't feel that kind of feeling when I'm in New York. So I'm just overwhelmed by your presence here and whoever comes from that part of the world. Like for example, Dr. Indrani ji, since she has come, she has connected many of us with the this Bharat Adhyayan Kendra. I know the director of this program for a long time, but somehow the programs were such that we were quite busy in our own department, and Bharat Adhyayan Kendra had some other priorities and concerns. Through this program, we are again connected, and I'm very happy that Diaspora is also directly connected with this center. So, sir, just your vision about how to connect with Diaspora, where Banaras Hindu University can play some role. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. I have fond recollections of my visit last October to Banaras Hindu University, and I'm keenly looking forward to visiting sometimes early next year. Your university has such an iconic status within the Hindu worldview. And I recall as a student reading about Banaras Hindu University. And when I finally got to visit it last year, it was a dream for me because I always looked up to Banaras Hindu University as an inspiration in terms of preserving and fostering Hindu identity globally. So we always took inspiration from the university. And I'm so pleased that Dr. Rampersad is there. She has been such a powerful force, not just within Trinidad and the Caribbean, but globally in terms of bringing sharp focus onto the diaspora community. And I'm hoping that during my tenure here, I could work more closely with yourself, Indrani, the university, and other entities. I had about 3 weeks ago an organization focusing on the diaspora. In fact, I've given them your details and asked that they get in touch with you because they are based here in Delhi, but doing very good work in terms of helping those of us from the diaspora that are trying to trace the roots. And I told them about your program and that they should also make contact with the university and yourself. I think it's important during our time here, those of us that are from the diaspora community and in India for the present, we need to strengthen ties. I put forward last year a proposal. Last year, Minister of External Affairs, Dr. Jaishankar, came to South Africa for the BRICS foreign ministers meeting, and he had a meeting with the Indian community. And in my discussion with people like Raviji in Trinidad and Ravidev in Guyana and colleagues in Mauritius and Fiji, we felt that the Indian government tends to pay greater attention to the NRI community than the Girmitya, those of us that come from the Girmitya background. Now, this is a feeling that runs across those of us that come from the Girmitya community. And I've said this to my colleagues here in Delhi many times, even when I came last year. I said that, we need to have a focused engagement. And we put together a proposal to bring, and we discussed it online with colleagues that I've referred to from Trinidad, Guyana, Fiji, Mauritius, South Africa, that a small getting together to focus on issues I have raised that pertain specifically to the Girmitya diaspora community, or what I'm referring to, the Global South diaspora community, because it's unique in many senses in terms of the challenges we face vis-a-vis our relationship with India and other aspects that we may face domestically within our respective countries. So I would like to see that we have a discussion on. I've put this idea out to the group that came to see me. They're very keen to look at us convening a conference. We even offered that we could host it in South Africa, a small conference, maybe 4 or 5 from each of these countries, a getting together of minds just to exchange information on issues that pertain to ourselves and our challenges as a subsect of the larger global diaspora community. Our issues, as I've said, are unique in many ways and different in many ways. So I'd like to see that we give sharper focus to that dimension of the diaspora that I'm referring to, where we have commonality across such a large group of countries across the world. And I hope we can do that and bring greater focus on the global Indian diaspora working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It might please you to know that Ganesh Chand in Fiji is having a round table in May. He had planned a conference, but now that will go to October. So he wants to do a round table in May to identify the major issues of discussion. So that might be an interesting place for us to be at. And if I'm not too wrong, didn't BHU confer Basir Pandey an honorary degree? Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago then, Basir Pandey. Yes, no? Yes, I'm ashamed. I'm from Trinidad and I forgot that. I claim senior citizen rights. Yes, BHU did confer that, so that was very welcome. The BHU Connect, as you said, it's so iconic for us. It's where we look to when we say India and education, BHU comes to mind. So thank you very much, excellent. So we wanted anybody online, had a comment, the offline folks said they will defer to you online to ask the question. If not, is Raj back? No, not yet. Okay, Shrikant? No, Shrikant is such a unique. He was born in Qatar. He's my age. Born in Qatar, then came back to India, and he had a different kind of experience, returning as Indian, and now he's totally Bangalore. And we always talk about nice South Indian food. You know, he's. So I wanted to give you that perspective, but I think they are feeling shy, I believe. So, Professor, I shall yield to anybody who wants to say a few words, and then finally, Professor will do his wrap up and bring us to the end. Thank you. Ma'am. Identify yourself and speak. Thank you for holding up the flag of Sri Lanka high. Say who you are and where you're from. Anybody else? So our next workshop will be public speaking. Confidence, public speaking. Come up here.
Good afternoon, all of you. I am Duhaya from Sri Lanka. I am followed MA in Hindu Studies in Bharat Adhyayan Kendra, Banaras Hindu University. I was a teacher at the University of Jaffna in Sri Lanka. Our undergraduate curriculum in Sri Lanka is about the Indian diaspora. At that time, I was not aware of such information. After this course, I learned a lot about the Indian diaspora. It is important for each of us to know about the Indian diaspora because the Indian diaspora is one of the largest diaspora all over the world. Sri Lanka also has Indian diaspora. That Indian diaspora was sent to Sri Lanka in 19th and 20th centuries to work and plantation. So my motherland also has Indian diaspora. In this context, this diaspora course provide all information about Indian diaspora. This course is most beneficial for me. So thanks to our respected Indrani ma'am and entire team of our Bharat Adhyayan Kendra. Dhanyavad. Dhanyavad. So our Bharat Adhyayan Kendra, our head. Dhanyavad, sir.
Namaste, my name is Anuradha Goyal. I happened to attend this course just by chance because I was here right next to Indrani ji listening to her, so I happened to attend this course. But I'll wrap up what I felt after attending this course. We forget that people who have left the country still stay connected to the country. I come from Punjab, and there is a very famous poem by a poet called Shiv Kumar Batalvi. He says, "की पुछदे हो हाल फकीरां दा, साडे नदियों विछड़े नीरां दा, नदी से बिछड़ा हुआ पानी." And when I spoke to Indrani ji, it almost felt like they are the waters separated from their river who are yearning to come back. So thank you, Indrani ji, for giving me this opportunity and learning about diaspora. And I've actually included the recreation of tirthas by the diaspora in the monograph that I'm preparing about tirthas. So thank you very much.
We've also asked her to do a tirtha. Tirat, we say tirat. Here they say tirtha. We are the tirat in the diaspora. Come and make a tirat in our diaspora also. So now, anybody else online? No, Professor Satiship, I pass over to you.
वागर्थाविव संपृक्तौ वागर्थ प्रतिपत्तये जगतपितरौ वन्दे पार्वती परमेश्वरौ वंशी विभूषितकरान् नवनीरदाभात् पीताम्बरादृढबिम्बफलाधरोष्ठात् पूर्णेन्दु सुन्दरमुखादरविन्दनेत्रात् कृष्णात् परं किमपि तत्त्वमहं न जाने. Respected Professor Anil Sooklal ji, High Commissioner of South Africa to India, a community leader and academician holding PhD in Oriental Studies and Hindu Studies, both the branches. Respected Dr. Indrani Rampersad ji, respected Anuradha Goyal ji, and Professor Ghanshyam ji, the head of the Department of History of the Faculty of Social Sciences, Banaras Hindu University, the visiting fellows of Bharat Adhyayan Kendra, Dr. Gyanendra Narayan Rai ji, Amit Pandey ji, and dear participants, and Tilottama, who has been contributing for the last 1 month in this course, academically and technologically both. First of all, I am highly grateful to all the resource persons for contributing their experience in the form of their presentations and lecture in the short-term certificate course entitled An Introduction to Indian Diaspora. The course was inaugurated on 4th of November, and today this is the valedictory session of the course, that is 29th of November. During this period, about 4 weeks period, we had about 12 lectures of various dignitaries covering about entire world, about all the nations they represent. Many of the dignitaries who accepted our invitation and contributed in the short-term course were His Excellencies, renowned scholars, diplomats, and they have made this course a great success. On behalf of the Banaras Hindu University, on behalf of the Bharat Adhyayan Kendra, I again express my heartfelt gratefulness for contributing in this course. Bharat Adhyayan Kendra of Banaras Hindu University is actually devoted to highlight or bring into forefront the contributions of Indians living all over the world in various nations. They have today settled in these nations, and as per the experiences that were shared by the resource persons, they initially, under the effect of the colonialism, settled in these nations to contribute to the economy as an indentured labor, or girmitia in other sense we call it. But after the fall of the colonies, they have become an integral part of these nations, and they have been contributing to the economy of these nations, upliftment of these nations a lot. Later on, number of Indian people, after the fall of the colonialism, went to foreign countries to obtain higher studies, especially in the field of science and technologies. Some of the Indians who visited these countries settled there, and some of them returned to serve India with their knowledge. The members of the Indian community, though are little in number in many of the foreign nations, foreign countries, but they have actually registered their presence on the basis of their extraordinary contribution, extraordinary talent, educational and spiritual both. Later on, that we experience today, number of spiritual leaders have settled, have visited these countries, these foreign countries, and have now significantly registered their spiritual presence by means of preaching silent features of Sanatan Dharma. Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha. Evancha, and what Dr. Sooklal today mentioned, Yoga Karmasu Kaushalam. The yoga have been identified as the biggest soft power all over the world, and it has been accepted. But the situation has now changed, absolutely changed, as the Indians living in these foreign nations have now turned into a very successful entrepreneurs, chief executive officers of multinationals, diplomats, political leaders, educationists in the form of professors appointed in various universities, dignitaries, and above all, heads of many of the states. This is the present position. This historic course have become successful because of the contribution of the scholars all over the world. I would like to mention their names. The inaugural speech was given by the Vice Chancellor of Gujarat University, Professor Neeraja Arun Gupta ji. and she made an excellent remark about the Indian diaspora. The second speech was given by Dr. Ghansham, Professor Ghansham, the head of the Department of History, Banaras Hindu University, Faculty of Social Sciences. Then Dr. Arvind Bisesurji, then Ambassador Virendra Gupta ji, Professor Deepak Malik ji, a great scholar and Professor Emeritus of Banaras Hindu University, Professor Ashutosh Kumar ji, a Fulbright Fellow of Harvard University. He also contributed in this short-term certificate course. Professor Rupam Saranji, His Excellency Dr. Roger Gopalji from Trinidad and Tobago, Ambassador Manju Sethji, the former ambassador, Professor Vinita Sinhaji from Singapore, Dr. Ganesh Chandji, ex-Vice Chancellor. All these great scholars accepting our invitation have contributed a lot to this course. This historic course at Banaras Hindu University brought together some 80 participants from different parts of India and from different parts of the world. Participants outside of India joined us from Sri Lanka, Brazil, Suriname, Trinidad, and Guyana. And many of the participants are physically present. They used to visit this center and are highly benefited by the lectures presented by the scholars. What is the output of the entire course? I would like to highlight some points. You learned about a variety of topics that impact on the Indian diaspora from expert scholars across the world. For example, the scholars, they addressed role of temples in community migration, making of Indian diaspora in the United States, reasons for the formation of Indian indentured labor diaspora. Making of Indian diaspora in the United States was actually the topic taken by Professor Ghansham. Tangible and intangible cultural heritage survey of India's heritage across the diasporas. Second, migrant diaspora, Indians from the Caribbean to North America. Absentee patriotism, about the relationship between diaspora Indians and India. Indentured Indians making new lives through entrepreneurship. Living in between Indianness and Americanness and model minorities in North America. The making of the Indian diaspora in Mauritius. Belongingness and identity of diaspora communities. International relations strategy rooted in ancient Sanskrit literature. Linkages between India and its diaspora. Evolution of and the new phase of the francophone Girmitia diaspora in the Southwest Indian Ocean countries of Mauritius, France, Reunion Island, and Seychelles. Engagement policy options for India. Contours of diaspora Hinduism narrating complexities. The shaping of history, culture, and worldview of the Girmitia diaspora. The role of the Indian diaspora of the global south in shaping the new world order, which was actually presented by Professor Sooklal ji today. So these are the few topics which were covered in 12 of the total number of lectures presented during this short-term course. I again, on behalf of the Banaras Hindu University, on behalf of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Sudhir Kumar Jain ji, because of his initiatives, the Bharat Adhyayan Kendra is able to contribute in this field. I again express my gratefulness to all the resource persons and all the participants from various parts of the nation. And above all, have a clapping for Dr. Indrani, Rampersad ji, for planning this entire diaspora short-term course. She has so excellently planned it that we have been able to present it before the scholars. And again, Tilottama, who happens to be the student of Bharat Adhyayan Kendra, first batch of Hindu studies, she helped with her all the efforts to Dr. Indrani Rampersad ji to make it a great success. Again, have a clap for Tilottama. She is our student and she visualized the importance of this course. And again, on behalf of Bharat Adhyayan Kendra, Banaras Hindu University, I express my heartfelt gratefulness to make this short-term course a great success. Hope we will take the other points again under this course in near future. And one more thing that I would like to highlight, that a multidisciplinary course have been introduced in Banaras Hindu University under new education policy for the first time. And the title of the course is Hindu Diaspora, not the Indian diaspora. We have put actually the word Hindu in the title of the course. And many of the students outside the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences have preferred to join this course and learn a lot about the situation or the contributions that the Indians are making all over the world by means of joining this course. This is also a great success under the leadership of Dr. Indrani Rampersad for Bharat Adhyayan Kendra. And the students, once they join this course, they will be able to learn about the contributions of Indian people all over the world. This is also a great benefit, and for the first time in the history of Banaras Hindu University, this short-term course is organized and a multidisciplinary course under NEP for 3 semesters of 9 credits have been introduced. This is the actual achievement of her presence in Bharat Adhyayan Kendra as a visiting professor. Again, great clapping for you, madam. And again, thanks to all the scholars joining this course.
Very kind thanks for your appreciation, Professor. Nothing happens without your approval and guidance. So thank you for giving us the opening, to grow and develop. And my friend Raj is on. So let's just hear him for 2-3 minutes. Raj?
Yes, सब प्रणाम सबके. हमारा नाम राज बा. हम अमेरिका से आए, अमेरिका से बाटी, and that's
What happened? He was having network issues. That's why he couldn't come earlier. Hi. Oh, he's researching in Bhojpuri. He's translating the Bhagavad Gita into Bhojpuri. Yeah, so he has left America. He's spending some time here. He loves Bhojpuri. Yes, Surinamese connection, Trinidad connection, Andhra Pradesh, and I think some North. Hey, name. Raj, are you there? Yeah, I think we lost him. Well, that we shall close off. Hey? Jayashree Jayashree, are you up from America, right? At early morning. Would you like to say a few words? Jayashree is from Gopio also.
Hello. Namaste to everyone.
Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Such a wonderful lectures. See, this 1 month, all these 12 lectures inspired me. I'm living in a USA I came from Andhra Pradesh to USA in 2001. So this is my in-laws home. I prefer to say USA as a in-laws home. I learned so many things, and I'm representing as a Indian girl to promote Indian culture to US. So wherever I go, I speak into my language, Telugu. So that gives me my identity as an Indian girl and as a Telugu girl. So I wish to everyone in this diaspora, I learned so many great personalities who are contributed to diaspora, helping to develop our culture, tradition, and especially Hindu culture, Hinduism. I love Hinduism. So I'm learning Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana to promote in here in my community. So that's how I want to connect to my homeland. I never forget what I got from my country, and I want to contribute to this wonderful culture to rest of my life. Thank you for giving me wonderful opportunity to learn more about the diaspora. I'm the part of the Gopio in America. So this is wonderful opportunity. Thank you for giving me such a wonderful opportunity to learn more about the diaspora. And these lectures are wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, Indrani.
Thank you. Thank you, Jayashree. Our president of Gopio wanted to be to join from the very beginning, but he was unable to. But we have his blessings to go ahead. I think
Yes.
Raj is back. Raj, can you come back on, please?
Yes. Jai Shri Garu, Nenu Raj Matladu. Bagundara.
Bagunnam, Raj.
Nenu Bagunanu. So everyone, pranam sabke. हमारा नाम राजबा और हम अमेरिका से बाटी आयल बानी.
Speak in English. It doesn't understand Bhojpuri. Yes. Yes. Every time he talks.
Pennsylvania. My mother's from Trinidad.
Start again, Raj. Tell us about yourself. Tell in English. Everybody else wants English. From the beginning, he was trying to. But he has such an exciting background. Yeah. Can you do Raj, can you do the audio instead of the video? See if you can do it there. But he really surprised me with his Bhojpuri experience. And I am from Trinidad and didn't know. Yeah, so yeah, you can speak here. Forget the video. Speak, we listen.
Yes. Hello everyone, my name is Raj. I gave a little introduction in Bhojpuri, but briefly about myself. I still found myself in India. And the reason why is because I was trying to find a sense of identity. Our language is different. Our music is different. Our food is different. But I was searching who are we, where are we from? And lo and behold, my studies, investigation led me to Kashi, Varanasi. and then actually up towards हमारा अच्छा माफ कीजिए सबको हमारा नाम राजबा हम अमेरिका से आए हम अमेरिका से बाटी हाँ हमारा माई ट्रिनिडाद से है हाँ और हमारा Yes, I mean it's basically the same, but like I said, हमारा नाम राज बा, right? हम अमेरिका in every corner of the globe.
Unable to hear the voice, please.
इंद्रानी जी आप म्यूट पर हैं. You're on mute, इंद्रानी जी.
Sorry.
What did she say?
Yeah, I said Dhantal, I think, is in the Bhojpuri area. I had done some research on that. It's a long iron, a long piece of iron that they beat when they play for music. Dhantal
Right, but it was yes, it was once used for the cows and the different animals' plains to plow the fields, and that was turned into a musical instrument.
Do you have it? Is it with you? No, I don't think you're hearing me. We're going to give that work to Professor Amit to investigate the origin of the Dhantal in North India and what we have in the diaspora.
बहुत धन्यवाद सबके.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much,
you.
Raj.
Thank you. Bye.
Namaste. Bye-bye.
Namaste.
Okay, well, folks, that brings us to the end. I think our guys in the office must be getting nervous. Time to go home. Thank you. Saviko, get home safely. And those who are here, join us for chai and snacks.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you.
A request to all the participants. Can we keep this group on, like WhatsApp group? If we should not dismiss it, we can then keep on sharing our experiences.
Yes, somebody had made that comment, and we will keep the group going. Thank you so much, Sunita.
We can share our at least details about ourselves.
Yes.
a very brief introduction about ourselves, and we can continue to
Thank
chat
you.
with each other. Thank you. Thank you, Jayashriji. It was lovely to listen to you also.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.